Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a game that was. Listen, I don't care if you're a Canucks fan. I don't care if you're a Jets fan. That's a fun hockey game out there, right? You know what? Hey, let's have some fun. Let's jump into the Toyota and go for the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. This time, why don't we hop into the time machine and go hop in a 2027 all-electric Toyota Highlander. I don't know if you've seen this thing, and I don't even know why I'm going on this. You can't buy them right now. There's no directive for me to do this other than the fact that I've almost been swayed away from my original purchase choice because they've unveiled this thing at auto shows. It's gorgeous. If you like that kind of stuff, go check it out. But we're going to jump in the time machine and hop into the 2027 all-electric Toyota Highlander and talk about this one. Let's talk about it from the perspective of the Vancouver Canucks. Like, you got to be happy with that game if you're a Canucks fan, don't you? I mean, yeah, I get it. You want to win that game. Yeah, I get it. That penalty that's taken is probably one they shouldn't be taking, but the Canucks shouldn't have been in that game. This was domination by the Winnipeg Jets for the vast majority of that game. Outside the third period, where the Canucks, I thought, did a pretty darn good job out shooting the Jets 10-8 in that period, getting off to a quick start. Fourth straight game, the Jets have allowed a goal in the first 2 minutes of the third period. That's a strange one. But Jets were dominant in this one. Kevin Lankinen keeping the Vancouver Canucks in that one for an extremely long time. Doing so in, I thought, kind of a fun manner. Some really, really big saves. Jets all over it. Pucks flying back and forth through the crease. Two big posts in the game. But they kept pushing and they kept pushing and they kept pushing. And now I know there's going to be some people who take a look at that last game that the Jets played against the Tampa Bay Lightning and think that that was the Jets, best game of the year, and would think I was crazy for comparing these two games because this is the Vancouver Canucks, the last place team in the league and a team that's pared down and gutted itself. But I didn't think that Tampa was anywhere close to being on in that last game against the Winnipeg Jets. I'm not taking anything away from the Jets' performance in that game. This game reminds me of what was the best of the Winnipeg Jets when we saw it last year. And I don't know, Ken's telling me that. I'm just going to keep rolling with it because I can't see anything that's wrong with my setup here. The reason why this reminds me of the best of the Jets is, remember when we talked about it last year, the Jets would find themselves in situations where, at times there was just games that things don't necessarily go your way. I thought that was one of these games here tonight. And what did we always talk about with the Winnipeg Jets last year? What did we always talk about? What we thought they did well. What we thought they did well was that they just never came off of their game. They never broke structure. They never cheated it. They just had this underlying faith that eventually things were going to work out in their favor. They never went out of themselves and made mistakes. They waited for the other team to make mistakes. They applied pressure, tried to force those mistakes. The Jets forced plenty of them tonight. But what they did was they were ready to capitalize on those mistakes when they happened. And the first mistake in that game is Brock Besser, with just not very much time left in the second period, has the red line very easily. I don't know what's going on here. Do I need to add Ken into this show? Because if the microphone's not working, I don't see anything that is possible. People can tell me if that works better, but yes, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's working. I think people are just going to have to put up with this. If you can hear what I'm saying, that's as good as it's going to get here tonight. TKO Maroon says I'm fine. Thanks, TKO Maroon. Nice to have someone backing me here with Ken and the peanut gallery all over me in this one. Anyways, mistake made. Brock Besser, he can get to the red line and dump that in. He doesn't. He gets a little bit lazy, gets a little bit careless, dumps it in. What happens? Winnipeg Jets score right off the draw. They are built to do this. Jonathan Toews winning clean draws like absolutely nothing. Mark Scheifele puts it in the back, and it's pretty much what they did 2 games ago to get back into the game against the Chicago Blackhawks. And then they wait for the next mistake, and it's a penalty that probably doesn't need to be taken in a game that's extremely tight. And so that's what the Jets do in this one. Things aren't going their way. They manufacture, and it doesn't end up in the back of the net. But what they are doing is they're not getting frustrated. They're not getting outside of themselves. They're waiting for their moment. And they wait for that moment, and it comes in the form of those 2 plays. And that's why this game goes to overtime. And then let's just talk about, Josh Morrissey back in the lineup. If you wanted to know what the Jets were missing in that player, he gets 2 huge points on this to be the all-time franchise leader in points by defensemen. What I know he was heartbroken to miss the Olympics the way that he did. To come back and start things out that way in his first game back, absolutely huge as the Winnipeg Jets keep pushing. Hey, folks, you know how I feel about this. You know how I think this ends, but I hope you thought I did a good job honoring the efforts of the Winnipeg Jets in my show open when I talked about the Winnipeg Jets believing in miracles, continuing the push, not shutting down the season. Here, they pull within 5 points, I believe, of a playoff spot. And a great night for them on the out-of-town scoreboard is the likes of LA lost, Seattle, go on and on. This is a great day for hockey because that was a fun game. This is a great day for Winnipeg Jets fans because their hope is alive. This is a great day for Winnipeg Jets fans because the out-of-town scoreboard fell in their favor. I think there's a lot of happy people out there in the city of Winnipeg, and it's good to see you grumpy folks out there finally putting a smile on your face. I know what'll put a smile on your face is if we bring Ken Wiebe in, but I'm not going to do it until I tell you a little bit about Jim Pattison Toyota and what they've got going on for you this month, because this March, you're going to find your next Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Strong, capable, powerful. Are we talking Renny? No, we're talking the 2025 Tundra. It is the perfect blend of rugged and sophisticated. Sounds like we're talking Renny again. No, we're talking about the 2026 Tundra as it is ready to take you on any adventure. This month, finance the 2026 Tundra from 4.79% plus eligible loyalty. Customers receive a 1% rate reduction, but hurry. The offer ends March 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. All right, enough of me blathering on. Time to bring in the other guy who spends his time blathering on. He's the man, as you know, with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny, folks. Ken, happy day for a lot of people out there. Happy day for me. First time I've ever worn a 3-piece suit in my life. Ooh. Someone said I looked classy today. The advertisement suggested sophisticated. Someone said I looked sophisticated today, which is why I was confusing myself.
True story.
26 Toyota Tundra. But hey, this is a Jack Victor suit. Not sure if people know that, but the folks at Sportsnet have a contract specifically with Jack Victor. I know where you can get Jack Victor. You can head on down to Vittorio Rossi, where they've got a fine selection of them that will have you looking sophisticated, classy, things that I never thought would have been associated with the name Sean Reynolds. They get associated with things that are way below that level because that's what Frankie and the boys do down at Vittorio Rossi. So you need to get there, walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you upright, as Ken is about to do us upright on this game. Ken, that was a fun one. What'd you see?
Fun game for sure. Maybe the first period, wasn't crazy high, high volume chances, but it was still, pretty lopsided for the Jets. 10-5 shots or whatever else. But yeah, I thought it was a fun game. That Vancouver is coming in, feeling better after snapping a 7-game winless skid, but also on a back end of a back-to-back. But I loved how I agree with you completely out of the gate, Sean. I thought that Vancouver, for a team that's trying to be 31st or 32nd overall, essentially, they played hard. I mean, they played hard. Yes, it looked a little bit like the game against Chicago, maybe in the second and third period, when there were a bunch of high flips and not a lot of chances the other way. But man, I mean, it's a fun hockey game. I think the people downtown were into it here, Sean. And
Can I pause you just for a second? Because I don't want to come back to something that you started with, and I want you to get the full buffet in. So I'm going to just let you sit with your miso soup. I'm just going to tell a quick story here, and then you can get back to the buffet. But to your point about them playing hard, Ken, I had a great conversation with Adam Foote before this. And if people remember earlier in the season, Adam Foote talked about his team and had said when things go wrong for the team, sometimes or most of the time, his veterans are actually the ones that seem to fall by the wayside earliest. They get the bad posture. They stop believing, right? And I'd had this conversation where he talked to me. I asked him about, can you kind of bypass those guys and just get the young guys engaged? And he said, you know what? It's funny you bring up that point, because I remember going to Quebec as a youngster and walking into that dressing room, and I'm a young guy, and Joe Sakic is there. We're young guys, and there's a whole bunch of guys playing for the Quebec Nordiques who've been losing for years and years and years, and you can tell it's become their mindset and it's become their culture. And he said, guys like me and Joe, we were just happy to be there in the league, so we kind of weren't affected by that. We'd get scored on, so what? You just wanted to go. You wanted to go. And he'd said he's really trying to get that out of the younger guys on this team. I thought this game tonight was a good example of it. I just thought it was an interesting way to get that story that I wanted to get in the broadcast into the Kenny and Renny show and get Ken back to the table, because he slurped down that miso soup and he's ready to hit the egg rolls, folks.
No, you're 100%, Sean. So I think of Liam Ogren. I think of Atu Ratti. I think of Max Sasson. I think of Linus Karlsson scoring the first goal. I mean, we know that it was a tough time for the Canucks. We thought they probably would have sold a little bit more. But when you're in that next year country with a quarter of the season to go, it can be grueling. But I thought that they had lots of energy for a team that, had every right to be tired. But Jets took it to the opponent. This is one of those games, Sean, where, I mean, there was a sequence where you had like 4 times where you're like, holy smokes, how in the world did they not score there? Alex Iafallo's chance, I mean, off the pad of Lankinen. And then on the rebound, he thinks he has an empty net, and somehow Victor Mancini gets his stick in the way. Gabe Vilardi thought he had an open net. He danced around the goalie one time. The next time he had a rebound chance, somehow it goes wide. This was one of those games, Sean, where we've talked a lot about experience this year. A less experienced team gets frustrated in that situation, Sean. They probably stray from the plan. They kind of go out on their own program, try to go 1-on-3 or whatever else, try to make something happen instead of sticking what's made them successful. Their ability to play below the dots and along the boards, winning board battles. I thought the Lowry line did another exceptional job of getting the cycle game going. Sean, this was a game Kyle Connor could have had 5 goals again. I thought he was skating incredibly well, battling hard, getting to areas where he could get good shots off. I thought Mark Scheifele had another dominant performance. Important game for Gabe Vilardi. I mean, based on earlier this week being a bit frustrated with his game, I thought that if we still had a lamplighter goal of the game, again, it would be tough to flip the coin because of the significance of the Morrissey goal, but the hands by Vilardi on the power play marker, just incredible job by both of those players. I mean, you touched on it. I mean, there's been a lot of big milestones for the Jets this year in terms of points, games played, all of those things. But this is a special one for Josh Morrissey specifically, Sean, because of the role Dustin Byfuglien played in his life. Saying I want to play with the kid as my D partner, as a rookie, spending 50-plus games with him as his first partner, helping him acclimate to the NHL game. Morrissey being the stay-at-home stable guy when, Byfuglien had the roaming charges cranked up to its highest level. And then to see Morrissey blossom from more of a shutdown defender when his partner was Jacob Trouba to becoming a Norris candidate without sacrificing the ability to play at both ends of the ice. I mean, 417 points is an incredible number for Josh Morrissey. That number is only going to get higher. And again, the impressive part is that he hasn't sacrificed the defensive part of his game. In fact, his defensive part of his game is even better than it used to be, Sean. Exceptional job by Morrissey, essentially giving the Jets 24 minutes in his first game back after being injured at the Olympics. Outstanding effort by him all around. The Scheifele line again was cruising. As I mentioned, Kyle Connor really rolling. I liked a lot of what I saw. We'll drill into the new additions fairly quickly here. But man, the Jets' top players were absolutely exceptional in this one. And again, you touched on the Besser icing. Absolutely, that's a play that can't be made by a veteran player in that circumstance, Sean. That's one extra stride, or that's 2 strides at the most. Besser's a really smart player. That's a play that he's got to do a better job on. You got to get the line there. He wasn't really under pressure that it was going to be a turnover. And again, we've talked a lot about coaching this year, Sean. That play happens. Jonathan Toews is jumping over the boards, wins a draw cleanly. There's Scheifele putting the puck in the back of the net for his 30th goal of the year. We know that it has been a tough year offensively for Jonathan Toews at times, but coming through in a moment like that, that's what the Jets envisioned from him at points this year. Hasn't happened as often as they would have hoped, but that's another play where he wins a critical draw in the offensive zone. Scheifele cashes it in, and it gives them a little bit of life in a game where it looked like they may have trouble beating Kevin Lankinen. So again, lots of good from the Jets. Morgan Barron, I thought again, Sean, was all over the place. Crossbar for him early, really had a ton of high danger chances. And I'm with boring Sean Monahan, 23. There's no way in any planet that is an 8-7 high danger chance game for the Jets. That is not what I saw. Is that what you saw at 5-on-5, Sean?
No, it's not what I saw. And that would be a very, very good candidate for the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game. But there's a couple other that have beat him out, because there's a lot of folks here who they know Renny by these years. And they know that Renny at this stage, the way to his heart is not through his stomach. It's through compliments. That's all it takes here. Gift Guy says, Kenny, the second best dressed man on this show. Tristan Rivers says, Sean sporting literally the best suit on all of Hockey Night in Canada. Take that, Friedman. Take that, Juice. This one here. Sean, you and Suit looked razor sharp like Vilardi's slick power play goal. Hey, being compared to that, that's pretty good. And then finally here, the 3-piece Suit always rocks. Doubly now that Renny is wearing it. That's the top of the mountain, that one right there. All of them great candidates for the Flame and Comfort the Flame and Comfort hot take of this show here. I'm going to give it to all of them. Of course, all those comments and the hot takes lying there within, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth-related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. And when you get on down there, which you should, you will see it is one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort, and they will take care of it for you. Ken, a storytelling device, it's called a callback, and it's when you go back to something that's happened. And I got to say, we had a great moment in the broadcast where we called back what happened with Besser, the casual icing, comes back down. Jonathan Toews wins a draw. Clean, boom, it's in the back of the net. And we called back to 2 games ago in Chicago, where they thought that they could get away for the entirety of the game, icing the puck. Less than a minute left on the clock. Jonathan Toews, offensive zone draw, clean win, gets onto the stick of Cole Perfetti, boom, it's in the back of the net. We ran that coming out of that, and a broadcaster that we both know, Ken, who I have miles of respect for, texted me and said, "Great job on that story. That was worth it for me." And I went callback crazy after that. I said, called back that the Jets, they allowed a goal. I'd said it earlier, 33 seconds into the third, 4th straight game, they've allowed a goal at the beginning of the third period, 2 minutes in. And then I did the ultimate callback, Ken, at the end of that show. I called back that the last time these two teams played, Vancouver went up 1-0. The Winnipeg Jets tied it up 1-1. Vancouver went up 2-1. The Winnipeg Jets tied up 2-2. And I said, the way things are going, we're heading to overtime, folks, and a Winnipeg Jets overtime victory. Said that with about 5 minutes left to go in the game. That's what happened. Call back crazy out there. I want you to call back your thoughts, Ken, on the new guys out there tonight. Oh, quickly, what? Before we get to the next topic.
Pristine Roofing wake-up call to the Jets for the poor starts in the third.
Okay, there you go. That's a good one. I'll take that one. And of course, that means time to give North and Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your pristine roofing. All your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be glad that you did. And Ken, I got to say, I'm appreciating and liking that it's you more and more these days who is handing out the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, because you are the original giver of the wake-up call. It never should have been any other way. It should be Ken's award to give out, and that's it. So anyway,
spread the wealth. And also, Pristine Roofing wake-up call to myself. Challenge accepted. Folks in the comments section, I guess the next suit that I get from Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi must be a 3-piece suit, is what it sounded like.
Oh,
right?
Can you imagine you and me out on the road walking around town in 3-piece? We'd have to get monocles, the two of us. We would have to buy monocles.
How about the pocket watch? Maybe the pocket watch too.
Pocket watch and okay, hold on. One of us has the monocle. One of us has the pocket watch. Or maybe I'd go like full send, and rather than the monocle, I would get the little handle with the 2 glasses that I could put up and keep it on a chain that tucks into the top pocket here. Man, oh man, tremendous, I don't know where we're pulling this out, but it's going to be a time. It is going to be a time. Okay, I want you to give me your takeaways on the new guys in the lineup. Jacob Bryson, Isak Rosen. Shout out to Danielle from TSN for getting that name right out of the gate. And maybe throw some Brad Lambert in there.
We got to appreciate the grind because, like myself, covering the American League for a long time, Danielle Bain has experience covering the American League, and the Rochester Americans faced the Toronto Marlies quite a lot in the games she covered. So good on her for having it right. In terms of all 3 guys, Rosen, initially, great speed, got one, sneak attack shot away. I like the way he's patient with the puck, Sean. I saw an incredible amount of poise. For a guy that just played his 32nd NHL game, this was not a guy who's nervous. This was not hot potato territory for Isak Rosen. I loved his patience out there. I thought he's calm with the puck, made some really smart plays. I like where he goes on the ice. One of the things we've talked about, he's not exceptional defensively, but that's not uncommon for young players. I see a guy who wants to get better. I see a guy who is competitive. I saw a guy that is a really smart player, and I liked my initial impression. Now, again, we know this being a 1-goal game, Sean, Scott O'Neill tightened the bench up a little bit, more of a 3-line hockey game. Rosen only had 11:07, I believe, here in terms of ice time for his, 11:22, 15 shifts, 1 shot, 2 attempts, 1 hit. Liked his game, steady start. And let's also remember too, people want these guys to come in and have a hat trick in their debut. I get it. This is a great prospect. 87 goals, 185 points in the American Hockey League. Very steady guy for a young guy. But he also got in at midnight last night, is carrying 1 suitcase with essentially 1 suit with him because he was on a road trip with the Rochester Americans in Laval to face the Rocket when he found out the news from a buddy that he had been traded. This is classic, Rosen said he was sleeping essentially, Sean, on the road. And let's remember, we were doing the show live when the trade broke. He was in Laval, which is an hour later in the Eastern time zone. So pretty long day for him. I liked what I heard from him in the morning too, Sean. This guy's a really upbeat person, grateful for the opportunity to become an NHL regular. The fact that the Jets were a team that was interested in him in his draft year, 2021, meant something to him. And the fact that they've been able to keep their eyes on him over the years. And when he became available, they went out and struck and got him. That was impressive. Bryson, love the mobility. Obviously undersized, Sean. We know this. I'm 5'9". I'm having a hard time believing that he's 5'9".
He's not.
Exactly.
He's not. Well, then again,
it's not he was also barefoot.
He was barefoot. Yeah. So people imagine this. It's the scrum. We all are around the player. And the player steps in, Bryson steps in, and he's wearing no shoes, right? So right off the bat, if you're lifting like Ken Seinfeld wise, he's got like 3 or 4 inch platform shoes that he's bringing in. He's heightening, folks. That's what he's doing. So don't let him get away with it.
Come on. This is the guy who stands on his tiptoes when we used to do hits together. So you'd look 4 inches taller than me. Anyways, Bryson, not a big guy, but a competitive guy, Sean. I like the way he competes. This is a guy who is a left shot D-man, but playing on the right side. And I loved his answer this morning, Sean, and I know you did too. He said at one point, Buffalo had 6 left-handed shots in the lineup with injuries to right-handed players. This is very simple. If I can't play the right side, I'm out of the league, basically. So he adapted. I liked the way that he looked with Hayden Fleury on a pairing. Very good mobility. I liked how active he was. I thought he defended pretty well, all things considered. Overall, 19 shifts for just under 16 minutes of action, 1 shot, 3 shot attempts, 1 hit, 1 giveaway. Again, this guy can play in the NHL, Sean. This was game 290 for Bryson. And yes, he lost his job in Buffalo. Big deal. Buffalo's a first-place hockey team. This guy can play NHL minutes. He can give you quality minutes. Again, not a big, strong guy like the Jets are lacking a bit on the back end, but a guy that can give you solid minutes. I liked what I saw from him, and I think he'll get better down the stretch. Worth getting a look at. What his future looks like, I'm not sure. But again, I can see a scenario where this is a guy the Jets might consider keeping around based on who's under contract and who isn't for next year as a pending UFA, a guy that's going to be 29 years old. Again, we'll see how things unfold, but this guy looked like someone who has a pretty good handle on his situation. And Sean, I love the fact that he wasn't, afraid to go out and say, I'd been in the organization with Buffalo for 7 years and they missed the playoffs all 7 years. And in the year that they're actually going to make it, he gets dealt and was, a little bit disappointed. I like that, that admission. But I also like the fact that he's excited about the chance to be in the lineup and play for a team that's trying to make a late, Hail Mary push, if you will, Sean, rather than being a guy on the sidelines who's just on call if there's an injury to 1 or 2 players. So I think that was important. In terms of Lambert, Sean, I thought there were moments for Brad where you saw a bit of maturity in his game. I thought he was moving really well. What have we been talking about? Jets need to be faster. They were very fast against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but now they injected a little bit more speed with Rosen and Bryson and Lambert. So today, I thought that Lambert did a pretty decent job. Again, minimal minutes, 13 shifts for 728, no shots on goal, 1 shot attempt. But there were things to like about his game, Sean, and what you're going to like. And again, I know there were some people up in arms on the old social media, mediums saying, well, I thought I heard Kevin Cheveldayoff say Brad Lambert's going to get more and more opportunity. Well, here's the thing. Morgan Barron and Cole Koepke, Sean, as you know, are playing well. It's not a demotion, even though, yes, their line gets listed 4th. And I understand that in a 1-goal game that went to overtime, Lambert didn't play a ton. But that line has been getting double digits in minutes. They're creating offense. They're doing a lot of good things. So I think Lambert actually fits pretty well with those guys, at least initially. And you can also understand why Scott O'Neill didn't want to break up all 4 lines after the Jets played their best game of the season against the Lightning. So let's let this breathe a little bit before people start freaking out about Brad Lambert not getting a good enough opportunity here. Again, I thought there were some moments where he was doing some things that will get him a longer look and a longer chance to show he's an NHLer. Obviously, he needs to do a little bit more than he did tonight, but this is chicken and egg. Opportunity versus what you have and what you make of it. So anyways, steady for all three. And I expect more from all three, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to start off with Lambert, and this was something, and we're going to have to get back to this. We're going to have to get back to Kevin Cheveldayoff, but one of the things Kevin Cheveldayoff said in that meeting with the media was that they were waiting for players down in the AHL to make the decision for them this season. So all the folks who said what they've said about and questioned what the organization is doing when it comes to management, when it comes to the younger players and all the people who are frustrated by that, whether or not you agree with the answer was given there. The Winnipeg Jets as a franchise were waiting for one of any number of players down on the farm team to force their way onto the big club, to say, you can't hold me down any further. Now, I'd argue Elias Solomonson did exactly that, right? But Ken has talked about it repeatedly on the show here. Brad Lambert did not do that. A lot of the players down there have not done that. They haven't put themselves in a situation like Kyle Connor did before him, like Mason Appleton did at one time, like the list goes on and on. Jack Roslovic, players that were like, sorry, you can't keep me down here. You have to put me on the big club. That hasn't happened. What he did acknowledge, Kevin Cheveldayoff, was now the opportunity comes in a different way. Not because those guys grabbed the brass ring and wouldn't let it go, but because they've had to move on from some players. So the opportunity is going to exist here. I take a look at Brad Lambert and what I'm watching for now from Brad Lambert, because I see a whole bunch of people in the chat group saying, oh, Brad Lambert just has this and he's going to take off. Brad Lambert does that. He's going to be a game changer. I see all these comments that you're making here. And my issue with that is everything that I see those people saying is, oh, if you just did this, he'd go and get it. If you just did that, he'd be this. It's his job to be that, regardless of what is given to him. If he's got 8 minutes or 7 minutes tonight, then it's his opportunity to make an undeniable impact in those 7 minutes. I didn't see that from him tonight. This is not a bad game by Brad Lambert, but I am on Brad Lambert watch. Do you want to be an NHL star? You went back down to the AHL and you said you wanted to be traded because you didn't think you were being given an opportunity. What that means to me is when you get an opportunity, listen, it's the NHL. It's the best league in the world. It's $1 million payday. It's a multi-million dollar payday if you get it done and if you do it right. They don't just hand those things out to people. You got to go take it. So what I'm waiting for from Brad Lambert is to see the version of Brad Lambert, if it's ever going to come, that just goes out and takes it. None of the excuses that I see people making, just a great player saying it's time for me to go. Get out of my way. That's what I'm waiting for from him. I didn't see that tonight. I'm not expecting it to all get done in one game, but that's what I'm watching for when it comes to Brad Lambert. When it comes to Isak Rosen, there was a couple times tonight where I saw this is a skilled player, right? We know the book on him. We also know that when he's got to the NHL, he hasn't been able to stick in the NHL on an organization that has gone through and through and through young prospects like crazy. Now, maybe that could work against you because the team doesn't want to take too many young guys in there. But what I also see with Isak Rosen is that he was in an organization where other young players were playing there, and he could have had an opportunity to outduel those players. He hasn't done it, so he gets a fresh chance here in Winnipeg. I saw a couple times tonight where he was a little careless with the puck, where he turned it over, where he made the wrong play. What he looked like to me was a guy coming into a system saying, I'm going to show I can play the system first, and that's what I'm going to do. I think he did a pretty good job of it. But I also saw a player and little glimpses, I think, of what I think has held him back in Buffalo. It's that he's that skilled player, and sometimes when you're a skilled player and you come from being a younger player at lower leagues, you can get away with trying things. And eventually it's going to work out for you and you're going to put up a lot of points. Think of the career development of guys like Nick Ehlers over the years who would try things because you could get away with it when you were in lower leagues, when he was in the QMJHL. You can't get away with it in the NHL. I saw a couple times tonight, I thought that bit him. I think if you're going to see something happen with this player, you're going to see him stick in the position he's in right now and just try to be a system player till he gets it down, kind of like what we saw from Cole Perfetti last year when he just started being dogged and being a prick. I'm not saying Rosen's going to do the same thing, but win your battles on the boards, be in the right spot, move the puck where it's supposed to go, do that first, then go a little further. But I'll say this again, I see, and listen, it feels like after a night like tonight, a lot of people get the aviator tinted glasses out. I'm not seeing the amazing debut for Isaac Rosen that a lot of people out there are seeing. He's got a long way to go in my mind to be what people are hoping he can be, and that's a top 6 player, top 6 producer in the NHL. The one that I was most impressed with, Ken, was Jacob Bryson. I loved his compete. I'm going to tell you this. When I saw him, and to your point, saw how small of a player he is, one of the smallest players that I've ever covered in this job, you don't stick around in the NHL as long as he has. I don't care if you're on a team that's outside the playoffs or whatever it is. I know he was on the Buffalo Sabres, a struggling team for a lot of years. You do not stay in the league at that size if you don't have two things: compete and hockey smarts. And he highly impressed me tonight, Ken, with his hockey smarts. He looked like he had an understanding of the Jets system well beyond what he should have had just walking in. But beyond that, Ken, what you see with players who come into a system like this is, it's like I talked with the other players, get the system down and then build out from there. I saw him building out from there already on this night. Now, made a couple mistakes here or there, but the mistakes that he made, I thought, were not egregious mistakes. They were, you could see what he was trying to do. You can see they're the kind of mistakes that will get cleaned up quickly. I really liked his game tonight. He was, for me, the most impressive debut player for the Jets on this night. The one thing I would say is, talking within the Jets organization, you lose Logan Stanley, you lose Luke Schenn. That's a lot of beef. I know from the conversations I've had, the Winnipeg Jets will try to address that this offseason. And I wonder what that means for Jacob Bryson, because if you're looking to get bigger because you lost big guys, he's a UFA. Other guys are locked up. As much as I liked his debut, as much as I liked what I think he's potentially going to be able to do here, the Jets are able to go replace the size on the back end that I know they want to do. He could be the first guy to go because of it.
Yeah, totally fair. I mean, the only reason I mentioned it is because, Colin Miller is also on an expiring contract too, Sean, as an experienced depth guy. So, I still think that he'll be under consideration, was my point, I guess, depending on how things go during the rest of the way. But again, I'm just going to come out and say it right now. Sean, Rasmus Ristolainen is a guy the Jets were interested in way back to the Patrick Laine era. But the issue was, when the Jets were interested in Ristolainen, the Sabres were asking for Nikolai Ehlers or Patrick Laine in a trade for him, essentially, is what we heard. And that was never going to happen. So that's the style of player that the Jets are going to be looking for. Yes, Ristolainen had some injury issues, but Sean, you were there at the Olympics. Ristolainen played very solid. So to me, that would be kind of, again, top targets in July 1st. We know that hasn't always, been a frequent, situation where the Jets come through, but that's the type of player. Maybe you get a younger version of that, maybe a less developed version, whatever else. But that's the kind of guy I think they're going to be looking for in the off season here, to your point as well. So,
all right, hoping Ken and I covered all around the new folks stepping into the lineup here. I don't think we could do as good of a job though as Myers does covering all around the city of Winnipeg, because as you know, they deliver anywhere in the city of Winnipeg. So if you have any pharmaceutical needs, if you have any health food needs, any supplemental needs, you know who to call. Myers Drugs, because they will come to you. Give them a chance there, folks. Okay, let's move on here and talk. We got to talk about Josh Morrissey. Let's just do a whole. You talked quite a bit. I'm glad that you got Kyle Connor covered on this night. We got to talk the goal by Gabe Vilardi. We got to talk Mark Scheifele's night, and we got to talk Josh Morrissey's night. Maybe go in that order, starting with Vilardi.
Yeah, I mean, Vilardi is such an interesting character, right? And so today he starts on the second line. I thought he was going really well. And, Scott O'Neill, when the Jets are looking for goals, the temptation to put the top line back together was there again. And you understand why he did it. The goal doesn't come at 5-on-5, but Vilardi's goal is it's not just one play. And the hands play is exceptional. His ability to freeze Kevin Lankinen and go back to the backhand roof daddy special, incredible. But that play doesn't happen without a number of things happening in that, in succession. You have Kyle Connor ripping a shot off the bar. You have Kyle Connor ripping a shot off Marcus Pettersson's shin pad, which stunned him, which kind of got the rotation of the penalty kill out of sorts, Sean, which also allowed Mark Scheifele to create the spacing required after getting the puck from Morrissey. Even though the folks in the building are yelling, shoot, Morrissey makes the smart play to Scheifele. Scheifele waits perfectly, sucks the defenseman up to him, and then the puck goes down to Vilardi, who takes care of the rest with his hands. I liked Vilardi's game overall, Sean. Involved throughout, 21 shifts, 21-22, 2 shots on net, 4 shot attempts. Did have a few giveaways, 1 takeaway. But again, Gabe Vilardi can be an impact player. Whether he's playing on the top line or asked to be more of a driver on the second line, I think he's having another steady season. That's goal number 24 for him, I believe. Yeah, 24. Another great year. Quarter of a season left. Can he hit 30? I mean, as long as he stays healthy, that number is definitely in play, I think, Sean. In terms of Mark Scheifele's game, another exceptional effort by Scheifele. Again, big goal the other night against Tampa. We know the significance with John Cooper being the coach of Team Canada and all that jazz. Today, Scheifele, 24-32, 6 shots on net, Sean, all over the map. 1 goal, 2 points, 7 attempts, 1 hit. Excellent effort. And again, Morrissey, just an exceptional game all around. Just under 24 minutes. Listen to this. 5 shots on net for Morrissey, including the GWG. 10 shot attempts for Morrissey in his first game back. Scott O'Neill planned to ease him into the action, Sean. There was no easing, but there was plenty of action.
Ken, you absolutely nailed one very specific thing that I wanted to talk about before. But before I do that, I wanted to bring up this comment from Waiters, who says, is Renny and possibly Kenny coming to Tristan's show on Friday? Great opportunity for me to remind you that coming up, ladies and gentlemen, Friday, March 13th at Side Stage, 700 Osborne Street, tickets for $15. That is my main man, Tristan, and the 9 Live show. Doors open at 8 p.m. They're on stage at 8:30. Here, I'm going to copy it here. There's a link that I'm going to put into the bio, into the chat, that people want to buy tickets. When you're a dad of daughters at the age that mine are, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be there, but if I can be there, I'm going to be there. I'd say the chances are more likely than not then I will be there, folks. There it is in the chat, by the way.
I'm going to do my best as well, folks.
But
sounds like a fun night. That's for sure.
I can't guarantee it, but Rennie's intentions are to be there. I think the chances are greater than 50-50. Anyways, back to what we were talking about before. So Gabe Vilardi, it was good to see him get back to that goal. We've seen that from him there before. The funny part about that is he beats Lankinen so bad, who'd been so good that entire game, Ken, that if he just would have waited, Lankinen would have slid right out of the way and he could have just slowly slid it on the ice into the net. What I love is the absolute borderline cheekiness, but the just extreme uber confidence of Vilardi in that situation to make the move and then put it in tight up over the pad into the top of the net. Just the sweet hands kind of move that only, I've said this before, a tiny fraction of even NHLers have. That was something there. But you nailed it, Ken. The sequence of what happened there before, and you said this about Mark Scheifele waiting for the right moment. This was the key to that, Ken, because before that play fully develops, Gabe Vilardi is open. He's open. He's open alone down the net. He's open. If Mark Scheifele can get it to him, he's got the jam play, and he's got a little bit of time. But what Mark Scheifele does is, rather than getting the puck to him for a grade A opportunity right there, he turns and looks across the ice and starts moving towards the middle of the ice. In doing that, he moves his man with him, but he also forces the defender in the middle of the ice, whose job it would be to hold off Vilardi, to freeze, wondering if there's going to be a shot or if Mark Scheifele is going to kind of push a little bit in there. He sucks that guy in, he hypnotizes him, and then he gives the puck to Vilardi with that much more room. At first, I was sitting there thinking, Mark, you're wasting your opportunity. You need to get him the puck. And then in doing what he did, he turned an A chance into an A++ chance and gave Vilardi, you give him that kind of time all alone in front of the net, he's going to score. Hey, it's his amazing hands that create that goal, but it is also brilliance on the part of Mark Scheifele that creates that goal. He, of course, gets the puck from Josh Morrissey, the point that tied him for Dustin Byfuglien, but he scores the OT winner. Ken, I had the opportunity to have a quick conversation with Josh when we were overseas, where I told him how kind of, like how I had been looking forward, because the mixed zone there, it's not PR guys who are saying you can talk to this guy, you can't talk to this guy. I had the opportunity when he was playing to grab Josh anytime I wanted to and speak with him. And I'd said to him, I was really looking forward to talking with you about your experience and the games as this went on. It was a little bit of a bummer. And I said to him, I guess I'm going to have to settle for covering the many amazing moments in your career that you have ahead of you, right? I got to talk to him after the game in the interview. Go check it out, because it's a great conversation about Dustin Byfuglien is a big part of it. But I had said to him, listen, Josh, when I talked about covering future amazing moments in your career, I didn't think you were going to go out and get it done in the very next game, right? But that's Josh Morrissey. That's what he's capable of. That guy on this night scores a massive goal. And he also, ladies and gentlemen, scores the franchise lead in points by a defenseman. Amazing stuff. And speaking of scoring, you can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more, or head on down to your local Cambrian branch, because if you do so, you'll be happy, just like I was, because I just wrapped up all my dealings with the fine folks down there. And Ken just wanted to do this. Got to throw up the good old QR code, because that will take you to the K&R Cambrian page. It's fun. It's great stuff. You'll love it. Go check it out. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Yes, indeed. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact Lou Ferlin at Real LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
All right, good thing it's a Hockey Night in Canada day, because the game starts an hour early, because we're going to need a little time, Ken. Feel like we're going long on this day, because we have to talk to everyone about, essentially, I think we've covered off the new players. Sure. If there's any loose ends you need to tie up with the moves that were made or the players that left through trade deadline, go for it. But we have to talk about Kevin Cheveldayoff's press conference. So I'll let you get started on that.
Just quickly, wrapping up the player portion, again, we've covered this team for a long time. I'm fortunate enough to have covered it all 15 years, and you're not that far behind, Sean.
Don't rub it in, Ken. Come on, just move on.
I'm not rubbing it in. Just this is an area where thank yous are involved. Kind enough to have Logan Stanley give me a shout yesterday, Sean. And again, we're always trying to take people behind the scenes. Logan is someone that I've covered since 2016 draft. We were there in Buffalo when the picks were made. Covered the ups, covered the downs, covered the roller coaster that has been his career. He was kind enough to call. And again, get this, Logan tries calling me back in the middle of the Connor Hellebuck scrum yesterday. I missed the call, thinking I missed the only chance. He gets back to me to say his flight is at 5:30. He'll try me later on. There, lo and behold, there he calls and was kind enough to, explain what the week was like, what the last, 24 hours was like, that he left the door open, even though the negotiations didn't go as planned and lead to an extension, said he would never close the door on a return to Winnipeg at some point. Didn't say it was this summer, didn't say it was down the road, but was thankful for the way the organization treated him. And again, as reporters, we're just trying to cover these guys as best we can and be fair. Again, for Logan, that included some ups and some downs and some tough times, some healthy scratches, some big moments, 2 goals on Carey Price, and also a career year this year. So anyways, just a stick tap to him for his, ability to reach out at a time where he was pretty busy and on his way to Buffalo. So again, just wanted to kind of wrap that portion of it up.
But before you move on, I'll just jump in on that. And I will say this, Logan Stanley took a level of abuse from the fan base here in Winnipeg that I don't know was extended to other players in a higher volume potentially. Like, he took a lot from fans for a long time. The whole 6'7" thing for the longest time was something people used to throw out as a veiled jab, a veiled insult, whatever it was. Logan Stanley, I will say this, I can't imagine what it's like to be in a hockey market where a fan base turns on you. I have a lot of admiration for how, that he heard that noise. And I have a lot of admiration for how he conducted himself through that, how he believed in himself through that, how he pushed through that for years. We're not talking about, a fan base turning on a player for a month, or he, had a bad month and people get like this. You're talking about a player that was often ridiculed by certain members of the fan base for an extremely long time. And we all know that things get amplified on social media, so it could feel like this is a player who endured that for an extremely long time, never showed any signs, Ken, of it getting to him. Never did I find would he lash out at the fan base or fans in general. Because of that, I never felt a feeling from him that he was angry or thought things were unfair, even if potentially they may have been a little bit unfair. But most impressive to me, having young kids in sports and trying to teach them to be mentally strong and to push forward and he went through that with all the signs of like blooming late. I should have got here years ago. He stayed with himself. He stayed with himself through that external pressure that happened and got to a place where he showed he was a player of value. I just think from a human element of this entire thing, Logan Stanley, I think, sets a standard that if you've got kids in sports, point to that guy and say, that guy endured, believed in himself, kept going, handled himself with class, didn't lash out at the haters, just kept believing in himself and kept to himself. I think that Logan Stanley, in retrospect, when you look at the entirety of it, handled his experience in Winnipeg in an unbelievably classy manner. He should be commended for having done so.
Yeah, and just quickly too, wrapping up that trade. I mean, Luke Schenn is a guy who, only arrived at the trade deadline last year, but very insightful person, great quote. Things didn't always go as smoothly as, he would have liked or the fan base would have liked, but, class act as well. And, as a reporter, he'll be missed because he's an insightful guy. Tanner Pearson, didn't have a chance to talk to him too often this year, Sean. But again, that's one where, some folks have been saying lots of things and whatever else and moving on. People wanted him waived, but this is a guy that had 7 goals at even strength, Sean. So as I've been saying for weeks now, I'm not surprised that a contending team, especially one that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2010, 2011, is interested in 2 players that have won a Stanley Cup. and have been able to be in the lineup regularly and bring some size and character and championship pedigree. So anyways, stick taps or whatever to all three of those guys, and we'll be watching them in their run with Buffalo here.
Just quickly on him, had a conversation with him because, as you know, Ken, extremely accessible guy, great human being. It's funny. I sat down with him and missed a Scott Arniel avail about 2 months ago because I was chatting with him and I'd had a really interesting conversation with his brother. I should bring that up at some point because his brother ends up with the New York Islanders. And strangely enough, I had a fascinating conversation with him. I don't think I've shared on the podcast before about the New York Islanders a couple months back where he ends up going. But just had a conversation with him, talked some really interesting stuff about when he was almost out of the league, how he made it back in, the belief he had in himself, the belief that if things didn't turn around in Winnipeg, that there were going to be teams wanting him, his understanding of his value and the role that he can play on teams contending in the playoffs. I had, again, a ton of admiration for a guy who also this year took a lot of guff from Jets fans and the fan base, mockery of his foot speed, all these different kind of things. And yet here he is being valued and picked up by another team in this situation. The funny part about the story, Ken, was he was so invested in talking about all this stuff that 35 minutes passes by. People were sitting in the dressing room. Reporters are supposed to have been gone 30 minutes ago. People keep coming back in to do work, and they're like, my God, what's Reynolds doing in here? Get him out of here. And at some point, I got up to leave, and I was like, this is your fault, I tried getting out of this conversation 5 times, and we're here because you wanted to keep talking. He's like, I know, I just can't. But it was nice to have a player who came in very, very accessible. And Ken, I don't know if we ever said this story online at first. One of the first things right off the bat that impressed me about him is when he got picked up by the Jets last year. Ken had a birthday very shortly after the acquisition, and the one Winnipeg Jet that wished Ken a happy birthday was the brand new to the team, Luke Schenn. That's a guy who's going out of his way to come into a town and connect with that town. Good on Luke Schenn. The Jets as an organization, I think, grew with the addition of that player and will benefit from that player being here years after his departure.
Yeah, I don't want to get sidetracked, Sean, but I don't think we were very far off from having a Schenn brothers reunion. The New York Islanders were watching the Jets very closely on that last road trip, and even at the start of the homestand. Ryan Bowness, the assistant GM for the Islanders, he watched several games on the California trip and was here on Tuesday as well before he connected with his team on the road right before this trade was made. Great insight shown. I don't know where it was from, but my colleague Mike McIntyre showed me the Blues gave the Islanders Matthew Darsh, and I believe Bowness was involved, the opportunity to talk to Braden about waiving his no move to go there. And again, I'm not saying I don't have this firsthand, but it would make sense that if they were looking to acquire Braden, that they were highly considering Luke Schenn as well to add some depth on the back end before he ended up in Buffalo.
Okay. Let me start on Chevy because you started on
Please
the last two. Okay. Mid-season avail, Kevin Cheveldayoff. We talked about it on this show. If you remember, my criticism, and it was criticism, was fairly heavy at that time. If you remember, I thought Kevin Cheveldayoff came out. I didn't think he gave much in the way of answers. I think a lot of it was word salad. I think a lot of it was, you and I had a little bit of a standoff on that show where I disagreed with you in that you had said that he said it starts with me and that he'd taken accountability. And I objected to that because what I'd felt he'd done is he'd said it starts with me and then proceeded to stonewall any kind of explanation of how it was on him after that. I thought it was a tough moment for an organization that needed clarity from its leaders. It was a tough moment for an organization and a fan base that I think needed communication at that time. And I was very, very critical at the time of that happening. So when you are critical of someone when they deserve it, and I think Kevin Cheveldayoff deserved it at that time, you got to give credit when it's deserved, and I think it's highly deserved this time as well. Kevin Cheveldayoff was not hiding behind word salads. I thought he was extremely direct. He was extremely open. If I'm a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, I feel like my general manager talked to me, explained things to me. He jumped in and talked about, talked more than we've heard him talk about his responsibility in what happened this year. And Ken, honestly, I feel like he talked to the degree that I almost sense, and maybe this is why you don't talk. I don't think it's a bad thing, but people could try and make it into a bad thing. I think he talked to the degree that I almost see not a departure, but that his thought process is in a different place than the rest of the team. Because what I saw from Kevin Cheveldayoff, as a guy who's looking to restock, the shelves, the organization, all those different kind of things. I almost felt like there's a guy who's like kind of bracing, saying, my God, if they keep winning here and come short of the playoffs, that is not a good thing for us. Although Kevin Cheveldayoff would never be the kind of GM who would want his team to lose on purpose. But I thought he was so open to the degree we'd asked him about that second round pick, and he had a really great explanation, Ken, where he said people throw around second round picks on trade deadline day like it's something that barely has any value. But then at the draft, the value of a second round pick is absolutely massive. What I heard him say, Ken, was that second round pick that they got from Buffalo will be very much in play this summer around the draft as a way for Kevin Cheveldayoff, who still believes strongly in the core of this team, to try and make this team better over the offseason to compete next year. And it seems like a very specific target for him, because I don't know about you, Ken, but I also heard from him, basically, this is the way I took it, suggesting that the UFA market, he expects it to be weak. He doesn't expect it to be very strong. And I see a guy who very much knows the gravity of this situation and the weight that is on top of him, because there's going to be a lot of holes in the organization he's going to need to fill, and not a strong UFA class in order for him to fill it. What'd you hear?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty well put. I thought that Kevin was very open. And again, this is not pushback, but this to me, I think it's easier for Kevin to be as open as you wanted him to be at the midway point at the deadline, because it was pretty clear that he was a seller, and I don't think he was ready to declare at the midway point. Again, I'm not taking him off the hook completely. I thought he could have been a little bit more open, but it didn't surprise me, was my point, that he wasn't more open then. I'm much happier as a reporter that I would rather him be open all the time, but I'm not surprised that he didn't want to declare at that time.
Just 1 second. I want you to continue going. I just want you to ask this in the moment. After that availability at the midseason, he went on the TSN broadcast with Sarah Orlesky and had an acknowledgement on the air that maybe that hadn't gone so good, and tried to be a little bit more open. You don't think totally his performance this time around has something to do with how the last time was received?
Not as much. I'm not saying it's impossible.
You don't think there was a lesson learned here?
I just think that there was after the deadline, you're able as a manager to take a little bit more of a deep breath. But again, if it was part of that, then I'm all for it, Sean. If it was part of a lesson, then I'm all for it. And, hopefully it's a little bit more forthcoming at next year's midway point as well. But I thought there was a great acknowledgement. And again, he said it starts with me. He acknowledged that his free agent signings did not go as planned, which I think but again, my argument is that at the 40 game mark, you're still hoping there's enough runway for that to change without, kind of not throwing those guys under the bus, but like demanding more. But again, I'm with you. I think both of those guys, Jonathan Toews, Gustav Nyquist, they knew that more was expected and wouldn't have crumbled at the suggestion by the general manager that they haven't played up to par. So I thought I thought there was more clarity. I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff, and this is how I wrote it, I think that they straddled the fine line probably as well as they could have. Sean, you and I talked about this before. I think the only way the Jets could have had a better deadline is if they had added a higher end ticket that was on an expiring contract to somehow find their way back to get a second, first-round pick. But Sean, those deals didn't happen on Friday. Again, I'm not talking about the double retention days and the new rules. I'm talking about the ability to add and then be given a bonus asset for it. The fact that the Jets traded out 3 pending unrestricted free agents and came back with, I think it's 5 assets. That's an impressive, it's 6 assets, I think. So anyways, it's something where, again, there were no blockbusters made, but I think the Jets did well with what they had. Now, again, it's not going to be an A grade unless Rosen hits and becomes a, second line contributor for a long, long time. But to me, it's a ground rule double, Sean. You know how much I love baseball, and it's just around the corner. To me, this is a ground rule double with the potential to stretch it into a triple if that player specifically ends up hitting. Again, that second round pick, I'm with you 100%. That pick is 2027 second. But Sean, I think that the 2027 second will be valuable this summer as well, whether teams are looking to add, or maybe some of them are thinking about, more down the road in future success. But, I agree. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff knows he needs to upgrade and augment the talent level around his core. I think he acknowledged that Rosen was part of that, but he can't be the only part of that. They want to upgrade the roster. They also didn't want to deplete the team so badly that they couldn't compete in these last 20 games. But overall, I thought he did a pretty steady job with the hand that was dealt. And Sean, I know you touched on the out-of-town scoreboard. It's now 4-2 for Ottawa after 2 periods over Seattle. If Seattle loses that game, the Jets will be 5 points out of a playoff spot with 20 games to go. And we know it's an uphill battle and it's still a long shot. But Sean, I take a look at the Seattle schedule. It's no cakewalk here this month. They've got some heavy hitting games to come. And as I've mentioned for months, they're one of the teams that doesn't have a lot of battle-tested players. Yes, we know a couple of years ago they beat the Avalanche in a humongous upset, but they've missed the playoffs, I think, in 3 of the 4 years they've been in the league. So it'll be interesting to see how they hold up. Now, I don't think there's any head-to-heads with those 2 teams left, so that's obviously a detriment in the Jets' chase, but it's going to be a fun way to finish. And just wrapping up with Cheveldayoff, again, I thought the acknowledgement that they weren't where they wanted to be and that they plan on doing things to get them there was an important kind of admission, if you will. I thought he was very open and honest, and as you talked about, you nailed it. I don't think I need to go over it. I've been saying this for months. If Brad Lambert had played better 2 months ago, Brad Lambert would have been up with the Winnipeg Jets, but that just hadn't happened yet. So
yes,
Solomonson left no doubt. He kicked the door down. Nobody else in that situation even knocked on the door. Solomonson kicked it down. So I'll be curious to see how some of the young guys go the rest of the year. And Lambert will have a great opportunity. They flat out said he'd be up the rest of the year. So it's incumbent upon him to show that he's an NHL player and an NHL regular, whether it's here or elsewhere.
Part of me wants to go, but I just can't ignore this question because it's too good. Steve-O says, if the Jets can keep this roll going, are they tough enough for the playoffs? This, to me, Ken, is why actually I believe the Winnipeg Jets making the playoffs would be the most disastrous thing that could happen to them going forward. And I did a story on it, but the Jets losing Stanley and Schenn lost an average across their D of 1.5 inches and 14, an average. They are on average 14 pounds lighter as a defense core after losing those 2 players. The one thing that I will say is if the Winnipeg Jets, never mind, make the playoffs and they end up playing the Colorado Avalanche, that has ramifications of its own, and that's as tough a task as it can be as it stands. But the Winnipeg Jets, the trades that they've made here, when you're a seller, this is the problem. Teams came to the Winnipeg Jets and said, what is on your roster that could help us out in the playoffs? And the Jets said, how about these 3 guys? And the Buffalo Sabres said, sold, we'll take them, because they are buying the kind of things that you need for the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets sold a lot of the things that you need for the playoffs. Now you're looking at a defense core that is, fairly undersized. If you take a look at the whole thing, one of the players that you bring in is the smallest Winnipeg Jets defenseman that I've ever seen before. One of the guys that you would have to step into the breach for you would be Ville Heinola, who's not a very large defenseman. If the Winnipeg Jets run into a big, strong team, hey, let's say they pull off a miracle and get to the second round and have to face either the Dallas Stars or the Minnesota Wild. Like, anything can happen, folks. But let's just say this, the Winnipeg Jets, you talk about teams built for the playoffs, the Winnipeg Jets, especially on the back end, are not built to compete in the playoffs. And that's why I think, hey, this is great. Make your push, get to the playoffs. I still don't think it's happening, Ken. But boy, oh boy, if they did get there, I personally think they get in. They go out in the first round, and we look back later as that being a little bit of a disaster for the Winnipeg Jets in the loss of a high draft pick, should they make the push down the stretch here. Anything to say?
Totally fair. Sorry, Boring Sean Monahan points out I did not have the schedule memorized. The Jets do have a head-to-head at home against Seattle in April, so apologies there. Yes, just one quick one, Sean, and again, I don't claim to know him well, but I knew him well enough from being around the rink. Troy Murray, terribly sad news here, passed away, after a long battle with cancer. Scott Arnill was pretty shaken up over it as a former teammate and, fellow Jets
World
alum.
Juniors together.
Yeah, World Juniors won together. Troy's the kind of guy that was always great to talk to. Loved our conversations. Didn't know him well, but I knew him well enough and know a lot of people in the hockey world are hurting. This is one of the great, genuine humans, and just thinking of him, his friends, and his family after a really incredible battle. But again, tough day for a lot of folks, Sean.
Just before people get, sorry, Ken, extremely well said. Before people get a little crazy about the Seattle game in April, keep in mind, if Seattle loses tonight, there's potential for the San Jose Sharks, who are tied up 1-1 right now, to take over that 8th place spot with the victory tonight, and they would have a game in hand on the Winnipeg Jets. So yes, that's great that they're playing Seattle by April. Seattle may be out of the picture and be eliminated by the tough schedule that Ken has talked about. The San Jose Sharks are on a push right now and playing pretty darn good hockey. So it's not just one team, and you can't overlook everyone who's on the way there. Anyways, that's it for both Ken and I. This was a fun show, fun game, fun day. Glad that we did this. Hope you enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. If you did, we would implore you to support the sponsors of the Kenny and Renny Show, who fight to keep the conversation going in this space for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent, Cambridge Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, and of course the fine folks at the Keg. You have something to say before we go?
Yeah, we got to go Keg and Johnston Group. We never got it. We never hit it.
Oh, geez. What are we doing? Okay, Johnston Group, got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got, Ken?
I'm going to this is blanket to the power play here, Sean. They've been kind of under, not under siege, but, it was one of the things Kevin Cheveldayoff pointed out. The Jets special teams have not been nearly as good as they were last year. The power play included, which was number 1 last year, and I believe still in the bottom third this year. In a game where they needed life, where they needed a goal, they came through in a big moment, thanks to all the things that we mentioned that led to the goal. But that's why I'm choosing that as the We've Got You Covered at Johnston Group play of the game. Okay.
For me, I would suggest it was the Pettersson. Don't know which one. I think it was Elias, the defender who on a wraparound play to the net and sealed it.
Was Marcus.
There. Marcus. There you go. Very hey, you know what? Tough times for the Vancouver Canucks. I thought they gave their young guys competed hard on this night. Ken, I don't know how often you've talked to Adam Foote before. We usually love to give
not at all
peek behind the scenes. Okay, not at all. My first time having a coaches meeting with him for a broadcast, we like to take people behind the curtains on these kind of things. Great guy to talk to. And in a way that it's like, kind of reminded me of the first time that I met with Jared Bednar. And I remembered walking away and being like, man, that guy is amazing. I always tell the story. He took over emergency for Patrick Waugh. They brought him up from the minors. They had the worst year ever that a team had ever had in an NHL season before. And I remember saying, joking to people, man, that guy's great. Too bad we'll never see him again. And now all these years later, he's a Stanley Cup winning coach and probably going to be a President's Trophy winning coach here right away. And just an absolute great guy to talk to. Felt the same way with Adam Foote. Hey, Adam Foote was an unbelievable player. That when we were young and growing up and watching, and he talked about those years with the when he broke into the league with the Quebec Nordiques. I was in middle school at the time when that was happening. But just, you can tell he's a hockey guy, but not one of those like stereotypical hockey guys in the way that it's like, like just like a real great human being, like, and really accessible. And I like it when guys liken to things and they remember where they came from. Marty St. Louis is the heavyweight champion of that, of remembering what it was like to be a fourth liner and then a third liner and then a second liner and then a Hart Trophy winner, like a guy who remembers all those things. So remembers how to connect with people. I could see players on that roster really, really connecting with Adam Foote. I think what we've seen in that organization, the biggest problems they've had have been higher and higher and higher up the ladder. But it would be interesting to see what he'll be capable of doing if they can put a roster capable of doing something together for him, because I, from talking with him, feel like this is the kind of coach who could really connect with players and end up being one of those coaches who sticks around for a while, because he's a player's coach who, now we just wait and see if he can get results from those players. Anyways, we're going to move on from the Johnson Group to the hashtag the Keg Save of the Game. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it's got to be the Hellebuyck save on Pettersson. I mean, maybe it wasn't his best shot, but I think it was critical in terms of, if it goes in, it's game over. And there's no Josh Morrissey magical moment. There's no record-breaking play. So I thought Lankinen probably had the tougher workload by a considerable margin. He had several candidates, I think, including, the toe save on Iafallo and a number of others. But I think it's Hellebuyck on Pettersson for me.
I'll go with it as well. That's Ken's and my hashtag the Keg Save of the Game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the Keg Save of the Game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our winner from our last show, who is Coachy51. Coachy, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the Keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Ken, all good things must come to an end, and I guess I'm going to have to take this 3-piece suit off at some point. Considered sleeping in it. The boys told me that's probably not the best thing to do, so I won't do that. But like that, this show will have to come to an end. I told you about our sponsors. Appreciation to all of them, and appreciation to all of you. We had a lot of fun with you here today on what I thought was just a fun day of hockey all around. Can't wait to do it with you all over again. Let's reconvene right here, right in this space, and do it all over again on Tuesday. Talk to you later, folks. Go get those tickets for Tristan's show. I'm going to buy a ticket regardless of whether I'm going to be there. Bye-bye.